Welcome, everyone. Better late than ever. We're like a month late. This is our Android Week with Alan Furstenberg in New York, Bruce Turner in Lynchburg, Virginia, Duke Carrico in Kingsport, Tennessee, Kadeas Kalut in Newport Beach, California, and in Menifee, California, Pam Azure. This is our Android Week. And I just realized I'm not dressed. So I'm going to dress while Bruce tells us about his new phone. Welcome back, Bruce, in Lynchburg. Good to have you with us. So you tell us about the demise, which was great for me because Bruce gave me some batteries and a charger and a case, which I have broken. So I'm going to actually ask him to tell me what the case was. One of the bottom snippets broke. It still functions, but tell us about your new phone and what you think about it. And we got to be in a hurry tonight because YouTube Live is kicking me off. They always troll my show. They always deliberately say, make sure you do the YouTube maintenance during Dan's show. So at 10 p.m. Eastern, they're going to cut us off, so we'll end shortly before that. So tell us about your phone.
Sure. Well, as you know, and of course, I think the operative words back in the day was a beautiful Galaxy Note 2. We used to use that phrase a lot. But the Note 2 finally died on me, and how it happened was I began to experience these spontaneous reboots, which it's not unusual to have every once in a while. And it started happening maybe once a week, then twice a week. And then on a particular Saturday, it did it 3 times in a row. And the 4th time trying to restart itself, it would not do anything. So it turned out it was a hardware problem. Fortunately, I had insurance on the phone, and my deductible was $99. And, I was still 3 weeks away from being out of contract, and one of the things I discovered was, last time I bought a phone, when I bought the Note 2, they would let you update as long as you were within the last month of your contract. No more. They make you wait, at least AT&T does, to the very last day. Otherwise, they put you on that next program. So I wasn't going to do that, so my best route was the insurance. Well, there's no more Note 2s being made, obviously, so they couldn't replace it with a Note 2. I figured, well, maybe they would replace it with a Note 3, but they didn't do that. Instead, they replaced it with a Samsung Galaxy Alpha, which is Samsung's attempt at making a little better quality phone as far as the frame. Still has the plastic back, but I like that because you can take it off and put an external battery in it. But it's got this machined aircraft, beveled edges on it. It's a very nice phone. So I'm getting used to having a phone that I can operate with one hand again. And so now I'm out of contract as of November the 29th, and I've got a decent phone that was just released back in October. So I'm feeling pretty good about it so far right now. So anyway, not a bad phone.
What's the screen size? You're used to the 5.5-inch Note 2. What's that?
This is 4.7. This is the same dimensions of the iPhone 6, so it's really designed to compete against the iPhone 6. The iPhone 6 is a little taller overall, but the screen size is the same. But it's got that nice quality machined aircraft aluminum bezel all around the outside. So it's a very nice phone. I do keep it in the case, but I took it out of the case tonight just for you, Dan, and our viewers, so they could see the Samsung Galaxy Alpha.
Okay, so I have a question for you. You're coming from a 5.5-inch, one of the first phablets, Alan's favorite word. Obviously now you can do a one-handed operation better. So when you're drunk texting while driving, that sort of thing. Just kidding. But is there any compromise? Like stuff smaller, right? Do you find that you wish you had the bigger screen, or is the convenience of the smaller form factor and one-handed capability a net plus? Is it a net plus or a net minus? If that phone were not that the phone is newer and better, obviously, but if that were if your Note 2 were that exact same size, or if this was would you rather have the Alpha that you have now as a 5.5-inch or the 4.7-inch now that you've gone back down in size?
It's okay. I'm okay with it. The best thing about this is I could unlock it and sell it and buy a bigger phone if I wanted to. But right now I'm very satisfied with it. All of my, it still fits my my mount that I use in my car. And it fits in my pocket well. Yeah, I'm getting. I'll tell you what. I spend so much time using my Chromebook now that I do more on the Chromebook that I used to do on the Note 2. So I'm pretty much, using my phone as a phone, and as well as texting and photographs, of course, and
I'm in the
things
same
like
boat.
that.
The only time I use it is, like today I was listening to CNN live while I was driving, but I don't care how big the screen is because I had it faced, sitting on the car seat. I wasn't watching television while driving, but I wanted to keep up on the stuff in Australia. So I find when I most of the time when I want to use a large screen, I have a large screen available, and when I want to use my phone, I'm mobile and I really don't need the large screen. So I like my Note 2 very much, as you did, but I wouldn't mind a
Right.
4.7. That's not a huge compromise. Let me ask you guys one other quick question, and then we'll get to our topics here. Just because it's in the news, it's got nothing to do with Android, but it's a tech story. The Sony breach. Um, I got a question for you guys, and the reason I ask it is today one of our favorite writers, Aaron Sorkin, penned an op-ed in the New York Times criticizing media outlets for releasing these tawdry details. So I just want to obviously Sony has threatened folks to.
Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hang on. Sorkin is criticizing people for releasing sordid details. Sorkin, who made his career based on that.
Well, his were fictional. These are not. So let me read the last two. My first thought was this is absurd because like from the Pentagon Papers to Edward Snowden to WikiLeaks, Bradley Manning, media outlets have not been convicted of anything for simply releasing true facts regardless of the legality of their origin. And in the case of WikiLeaks and all three of the cases I cited, these were actual national security things. So here's the last, but this, he has a point, although I disagree with him. Um, the last two paragraphs, he says, I know there's juicy stuff in the emails, and I know some of us have been insulted, and I know there's more to come. No one's private life can totally withstand public scrutiny, but this is a much bigger thing than hurt feelings and banged up egos. If you close your eyes, you can imagine the hackers sitting in a room, combing through the documents to find the ones that will draw the most blood, and in a room next door are American journalists doing the same thing. As demented and criminal as it is, at least the hackers are doing it for a cause. The press is doing it for a nickel. Does he have a point, or is that just nonsense? It made me think about it again, briefly.
What's the difference?
Okay. I just want to throw that out there. But clearly, Sony threatening media outlets with civil, no way, buddy. There's no asterisk on the First Amendment.
Well, they're obviously trolling for somebody to do this. So I think they found a shill in somebody for the New York Times, knew that he'd get read a lot, trying to add some credence to their threat. That's what it looks like to me.
And as much as I am a fan of Aaron Sorkin, there's some disingenuity. I'm not sure what the word there is. He says, like, we did Sony. Is there any evidence that anything illegal or anything wrong or anything unscrupulous? Well, one of the leaks is allegedly that they were issuing money orders for people to buy a bunch of movie tickets, and then they would sell the tickets back to Sony to inflate the numbers at the box office on opening weekend, right? So there is some evidence of alleged, unscrupulous behavior. So I don't know. I'm sorry. It's interesting. I don't think I posted anything about the scandalous stuff. It was just more about the hack. I don't remember. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure that our viewers will quickly let me know if I've just accidentally fibbed. Okay, so our first actual Android topic is the cardboard thing. It's the little, like the Oculus made out of cardboard that Alan and others got at the last I/O. They've released an Android SDK, and apparently this is not just some 20% project for grins to give you guys something, but it's going to be a real thing. So Alan, I know you've played with it, I'm sure. Tell us about this.
So this is actually a big deal. There was talk back then about originally cardboard started as this kind of, hey, what is this thing? Why does anyone care? And now it's really grown into a big alternative virtual reality system. So it's kind of in some ways going head to head against what Oculus is doing.
With a whole lot less money involved for the consumer, right? This is
Well, yes and no. I mean, the interesting thing about what is now out there with cardboard is that it isn't just cardboard anymore. It's more a set of specifications for how do you build a portable viewer that you can stick an Android phone in, and not even Android phone. I've seen people using cardboard with their iOS device. I've seen cardboard devices that are made out of plastic. Some fairly durable designs too. So what it's now this combination of what is everything that you do to put it together. And with this announcement this week, what Google has done is they've said, hey, the software development kit that we'd previously released for using cardboard with Android, here are a whole bunch of new improvements to it. Oh, and if you're a game designer, here's a whole set of libraries that now work with the Unity game support system. So we're just going to leverage right on top of that system as well. And now you're able to use Unity or Android, and some people have produced iOS libraries on top of this system already. It's this big open system that's gotten a lot of support behind it now.
okay. Question. So this is obviously hardware. Oculus is a more polished thing, and this is cardboard, or one of the iterations that you've mentioned. But in general, as far as the screens that you're looking at, have you tried an Oculus? Do you have any kind of basis for comparison? I'm sure you've seen reviews.
I haven't tried an Oculus, but even Oculus isn't Oculus. I mean, we saw that Oculus had announced a partnership with Samsung. So there's the Samsung Oculus or something like that.
So they're going to become a platform.
Well, they're aiming to become a platform, and the whole point of that is that you're going to take your Samsung device and stick it into this other big, clunky hardware thing. And the two of them together are going to be doing it, whereas Google then essentially took this sideswipe and said, hey, do it with any phone. Do it with any phone. Do it with any physical hardware. Do it with this chunk of software that we're releasing for free. All of this stuff you can do for an incredibly low price, and they undercut Oculus. Now, my understanding is that, yes, Oculus does do some things really, really well. I have not done a, you'll pardon the expression, head-to-head comparison. But
that's a Bruce-worthy pun. Let me ask Bruce. You and I are old enough, as much as we don't want to admit it, we're old enough to remember the ViewMaster. They may still sell those. I don't know. I just saw Simon in the store. I only noticed it because the guy just died.
Let me interrupt that one quickly, Dan, and tell you, this is almost exactly like a modern ViewMaster. I had my son using one, and he then actually picked up an old ViewMaster by accident next and was trying to figure out how he could print something from his ViewMaster. So
I don't think mine had a USB port or Wi-Fi. That's awesome. But I remember looking at the ViewMaster. It was great, the little round things. Getting back to cardboard, it had a cardboard equivalent of like a DVD, right? The original ViewMaster. I don't know what they're like now. Mm-hmm. Bruce, does this excite you in any way? I mean,
Yeah, it really does. A couple things. One is it gives a low entry price to try out virtual devices and to see if it's something that I would be interested in. I'd much rather do this before dropping a huge chunk of change on Oculus. The other thing, and I'm curious about this, Alan, as I watched this animation on the website that we have in our doc, how easy is it to fold this thing, to make it operable, unfold it? In other words, would it be something that I could take on the plane with me and reassemble, when I got someplace else, if I enjoyed, playing games like this?
I've done it. I've taken a cardboard that was folded, put it together, and then sort of took it apart. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work great doing that way, but it can be done. And certainly with the newer versions of cardboard, they're really made to be put together and left in that configuration.
I understand.
Okay.
But you're still talking, it's almost at the point where if you're taking one someplace, you get a new version, you carry it with you, you build it at the destination, and then you give it to somebody else at your destination.
Or I could get two. Keep one at the Fairfield Inn Marriott in Melbourne, Florida, and have one here.
Right.
Okay, let's Cadeas, I'm not sure if you want to jump in, just jump in, because I think Cadeas is driving. He's in the hangout, but I won't call on him until he jumps in and tells me to or something. We don't want them texting and driving. Okay, so now you can control your Nest thermostat with Google Now, and it's on Android. It's also on iOS. Seems like a logical thing. So tell us about this, Alan. Also, tell me, do you think I was shocked at that they bought Nest and the price they paid. So chunk of change, wasn't it like $6 billion or something crazy? That could be wildly inaccurate. Don't quote me on that, but it was billions, I think. But
it was less than it was less than Instagram, and it's a much more valuable property.
It's a real thing.
Well, it's not just that it's a real thing. There's like real technology behind it.
It's not the teen website du jour. It's a real thing that sells in Lowe's and Home Depot, right?
Well, so yes, but it's also there's real technology here. What Nest is trying to do is not something that's easily imitated by 50 other sites that come along. Instagram, anybody can do that sort of stuff. Anybody could have done exactly. They were buying users. Nest, they were buying users. They were buying a product, and most importantly, they were buying a set of technology behind that product. They were buying the artificial intelligence system that was doing the analysis and monitoring. They were buying the infrastructure to build behind the Internet of Things, the networking, all of that stuff, the presence in a home, and the basics of that control. That's all what they bought, and I think we're beginning to see some of the investment in that paying off here. And to be clear, this isn't just integration with Google Now. What this is, it's more an integration with Google voice commands. So currently, you'll be able to say things like, "Okay, Google, raise the temperature in my house 2 degrees." That's the sort of thing that's going to be directly tied into it here. And until regular developers get access to that kind of positioning, Google's got a serious advantage for their own apps in this location. And now Nest is taking advantage of that.
And presumably they purchased some patents in the process as well. The
Yes.
Keurig of thermostats, if you will. Anybody else want in on this? Bruce, are you intrigued? But I think it's a cool idea, 2.0, thermostat 2.0.
Yeah, I am more intrigued with this today than I was, when they first purchased Nest. I've thought about this a lot. You think about ways to save money. Now, I work from home, of course, but for people who work away and maybe they're single, why not lower that thermostat and raise it up when you get home, or vice versa, depending on what season of year it is. So
your flight's delayed. Your flight's delayed a day, right?
Sure.
Let me lower it to 60 for the next day. You might save, $15 or whatever.
Right. Now, Alan, do I understand that with the Google Now, eventually there'd be the possibility where you could do some programming where, as it knows what time you get off work and how far you are away from the house, that some of this could happen automatically without voice commands?
Well, it already does. I mean, the brilliancy about the Nest is that it did learn when you were around and when you weren't around, or when you were more likely to be around, and automatically do things based on that. So it wasn't programmable. In fact, one of the things that people have found over the past 5 or 10 years is that programmable thermostats don't actually work all that well to do energy savings. And it's not because the theory behind it isn't good. It's because people never bothered to learn how to program their programmable thermostats. Okay. This is a programmable thermostat where you program it by just living your life. And yes, as it gets tied into Google Now's context-sensitive operations, this is one more piece of data that can now all feed together so that it knows, hey, if you're at work and everyone in your household is not there, then yeah, it knows it can keep it lower. If it detects a change in that might be outside of your normal patterns, it can make those changes even earlier than necessary or later than necessary.
Okay, so I think, yeah, and that's a real defensible patent, I'm sure. That's not just, but it's done on a computer patent. That's a real innovative thing. And of course, the programmable ones work better in the winter than the summer because it's easy to raise the temperature in the house very quickly. It's more difficult to remove all the humidity in the summertime. So leaving it off, the argument is in the summer it's better to leave it on more often than not, or whatever. Okay, so iPad sales dropped 12% as Android tablets soar. This is a price issue, right? I mean, they're dirt cheap.
It's a bunch of things. You really buried part of the main point, though, and that's in this, and that's the tablet sales as a whole are down 50%. So what it really means is all of the early adopters already early adopted. They don't see any need to upgrade, and now everyone, the rest of the world that finally sees a need to do this, they're getting something that's more reasonably priced and yet still full featured.
Yeah, I have no. I mean, I have my Nexus 7, and I did a factory reset. I have no strong desire or need to upgrade to something new. It might be a little faster, maybe a better screen, but I basically, I read web pages on it and that sort of thing. I don't really watch video on it. I would do that on my large screen here. So there's nothing I'm missing, I don't think. I mean, if it broke, I'd get a new one. I'm sure I'd like it better. But just like Bruce's case, he liked his Note 2, but it died, so he had to get a new phone. It wasn't like, I have to get a new phone. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, one of the things that I was going to say, and I know this to be true, at least in a lot of circles that I run with, I know a lot of people that are real techie. They're involved in music production and different things like that. And everybody I know that are, the part of one of the organizations I work with, who had iPads, who had iPad minis, and then got the iPhone 6 Plus, have since ditched their iPad minis and their iPads. I was flying on a plane. A guy, it was a really interesting guy. He was coming up your way to New York for an antique watch auction. I had no idea the millions of dollars that are being made in buying, selling, and auctioning off of antique watches.
Oh my goodness, the conversations about horology are incredible.
Oh, listen, this guy was this was the most interesting person I've ever sat and had a conversation with on a flight. But he had an iPad, and he said the only thing he uses his iPad for now is reading magazines. And he was reading some magazines, but he was on his way. He has a blog, and he writes a lot about antique watches, and he showed me one that he had on his hand. Incredible thing. It was amazing. I was blown away by the whole subject. But yeah, I think a lot of people, just like who went with the Note 2s, the Note 3s, and the Note 4s, are moving away from tablets. And especially for people like me, the Chromebook has become my tablet, really.
If you ever find the guy's name, or if you got his contact information, you should hook him and Craig Ship up, because Craig is a watch aficionado and just loves high-end watches. He's done a bunch of reviews, and a lot of the companies will sell him a watch because his reviews actually generate sales. They're good. But they would love batting back and forth. That's really interesting. So, okay, next up, and I'm rushing along because YouTube Live is going to do maintenance at 10 p.m., so I've got to hurry here. Okay, new Hangouts app for Android. I've been playing with it a bit. I haven't used any of the how do I diplomatically say any of the new silly features. But what's your first take, Alan, on the new Hangouts app? It's an improvement.
It's an improvement. It's fine. I think they've got some interesting aspects that they're including with it, but I don't find anything, shockingly brilliant about this round of changes.
Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, I sideloaded it as soon as it was available to sideload, and yeah, I think it's not a major improvement, but I don't have any problems with it. I think they continue to make the Hangouts app better.
Oops. Okay, so pardon me. Okay, so next up is Uber's app will now be pre-installed on Sprint's phones, and I'm not sure yet. I think the article says that it's going to be installed on existing Sprint phones. What do you guys think about this? Clearly bloatware. Uber's paying them somehow, whatever. I don't think that on the okay. What do you think about this in general? The second side is I don't think that there's any pressure at all from these unlocked phones that you buy for $600 or $800, and they don't have any bloatware. I don't think that's making any dent in the carriers saying, and I think AT&T and or Verizon already have this deal. I don't think that there's any pressure being applied to them to remove this ridiculous bloatware that they do. Go ahead, but you will be able to uninstall it if you don't like it. Go ahead, Alan.
No, there's been no pressure at all. And I've been saying this for a while, that although the Nexus devices are nice, nobody cares about them, to be perfectly honest. They're really an insignificant drop in the bucket. As for Sprint knowingly forcing known virus software onto your phone, I think that's criminal. It's really disappointing to see them doing this, but it's hardly surprising. What are your thoughts, Bruce?
Well, I have a question for you. Enlighten me. Known virus software. Are you saying that about the Uber app?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that's new. That's new to me. So,
Well, no, it was I guess about a month ago now. It was revealed that Uber is asking for all sorts of permissions for things that it doesn't need. So it's doing things like taking your SMS messages and is sending them to Uber servers. It's accessing your contact list and sending it to Uber servers. It's accessing all sorts of things that it does not seem to need access to.
okay, so more malware than virus, probably then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Malware.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
More spyware
There you
than
go.
virus
Yeah,
or
there you
malware.
go.
And I'll report back because I'm a Sprint customer, and I'll report back when I get it, if I get it, and tell you, like, do I have an options to not install it, because they can't just stick it on there and have it active without me accepting the permissions, right? Or wrong.
Presumably.
Cadeus, welcome. Do you have any thoughts on Sprint force loading, perhaps force loading? I think the article said that, but including Uber on all, pre-installed, and not to beat up on Sprint, because as I said, I think Verizon and or AT&T already do this. One of them does it. You have a nice fruit plate there, or?
No, I don't think that there is. I mean, I guess if they have an agreement, they can do that just as long as it's not necessarily forced upon. I didn't like that. What is that new one that they're forcing on people's phones? It's just about everybody does it now. It's the one that's the green shield that's supposed to be like some kind of firewall virus scan. I didn't really like those being put on people's phones, but as long as you can go in, somebody can go in somewhere and remove it. I think that's pretty good. I don't really have a problem with it.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I'm with AT&T, and I installed Uber just to check it out when I had my Note 2. But I was surprised when I got this new Galaxy Alpha to find that, hey, Uber's already on here, and I haven't updated that yet. So I found that interesting.
That may be the carrier, because there is another major carrier that has it. Okay, next up.
But also, hasn't Google done some Uber integration with Google Maps now? So when it gives you the Uber drive time, so that's just as integrated as anything else that we're listing.
It's interesting. Uber is the most simultaneously praised and criticized entity I can think of in tech right now, because they've got this boy in charge of their company, and he keeps doing stupid things, but at the same time, it's so innovative. And they're pissing everyone off simultaneously, except the consumers, who absolutely adore it.
So they're the digital Walmart. That's the way. That's part of what I see.
That's a good analogy. That's not a bad analogy at all.
Yep.
They're the digital Walmart of '86, if you will. Okay, next up is Google publishes live channels for Android TV app into the Play Store, but so far not much is on there. So this is an early thing. Is Android TV going to become a thing?
Cadeus, what do you think?
I knew this was gonna get through to me. I love Android TV. The more I use it, the more I love it.
You've got them all too, right?
You said what?
You've got them all, right? Don't you have like Apple TV and Google TV and everything?
Unfortunately, I still have an Apple TV, and I have a Google TV that I plugged up before I got Android TV, and I have 2 Android TVs and a Chromecast, and I still use Android TV more than all of them. So I would say I can see it becoming a thing just as long as more live-related stuff starts to happen. Like Pluto TV is actually pretty impressive. If you haven't, have you installed that, Alan?
I actually turned off my Android TV. I found it. What was that, Cadeus?
Wow.
Why did I do it?
Yeah.
Because the Chromecast was working far better. Far, far, far better.
I'll give you that. You're right.
My Chromecast just worked. My Android TV was kludgy as hell. We've had this debate about keyboard and remote controls, and the Chromecast integration with my Chromebook and my Android device worked, and its integration with anything on Android TV didn't. I think this new app sounds interesting. I think it shows promise. I think it's good and it's a must-have for any serious platform in the future. And someday Android TV might actually get it right, but it's not going to be this year, and I don't think it's going to be 2015 either.
Okay, we got to move. Let me just say a quick note to the attempted live viewers who may watch this later. Apparently, I don't know if we're streaming or not. Apparently, I got comments from 2 or 3 people here saying, when's the show, and they're angry. I apologize. YouTube is doing maintenance starting at 10 p.m. Eastern tonight, which is in about a half hour. So we got to close in about 25 minutes. But all my history with this has been that even if it's screwed up on the stream, that it will in fact eventually be there. So I was unaware of this until just now, and I apologize. I'm not sure, but I guess some of the maintenance is trickling out early. Next up is YouTube for Android gets offline playback, but only in India, Indonesia, and Philippines. And this makes sense because they're testing this in countries where folks tend to not have great internet at home, perhaps, with their mobile devices, but then they'll go to an internet cafe or go into the city, and then they might download a bunch of content, and YouTube was missing out on getting some eyeballs. And I'm guessing that the reason they're not rolling it out in the US, the UK, is because of rights issues. So anybody want to weigh in on this?
Well, I thought it was already working in the US now. I think it's a part of the YouTube All Access thing. You can download videos and watch them with no connection.
I haven't been able to do it yet. I think they talked about it.
Yeah, it works fine. I've been using it for about maybe 3 weeks. Yeah, it works pretty good.
Okay. And your video's off, Gadeus. I'm not sure why. Okay. YouTube or Google releases a new watch faces and developer tools for Android Wear. Some of these are very impressive. This is, again, is this just an incremental thing? It's a neat new toy. It's not dramatic, or what's the deal, Alan?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's been since literally the first apps that came out were people creating their own watch faces for Android Wear. And honestly, most of these early ones were crap. In fact, they were worse than crap. They were just battery-sucking, useless tools that, were pretty. Since then, the major ones have been more refined. They're much more attentive to battery usage. What this does is it gives actual support for those platforms and says, look, if you're going to build one, use the API, do it right, you're going to save a lot more battery. So this is basically the API that the built-in watch faces use. They let you create some really neat stuff, and I think what we're going to see is eventually it's going to go beyond time. So rather than have a watch face that's telling you the time, we're going to see apps that are doing truly, truly glanceable interfaces on your wrist, leveraging this API to also show you the time, as well as other information that's important to you at that moment. So I think the long-term impact of this is huge. It's major. It's very important. But right now, it's being taken advantage of by people who don't really know what they've got in their hands or on their wrist, quite literally.
Bruce, are you ready to get a Android watch, an Android Wear device?
Oh, if I could get, like I see this one on the article, with Santa Claus on it or the Minions, that'd be cool. No, I agree with Alan. I think there's a lot more to what ultimately is going to come from this as people begin to use the API and learn how to develop properly for it. I think it's great. I have this question for you, Alan. I mean, being a Google Glass developer and everything, what do you hear about people moving to developing for Android Wear? Is it a real growing market?
It's interesting the way you painted that argument. I think you're kind of missing the point.
Okay.
It isn't going to be an either-or thing. You're not going to be developing for Glass or for Wear.
Right.
You're going to be developing for Android wearables.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, you're going to be developing for an Android ecosystem, and Wear is one piece of that ecosystem, and Glass is another piece of that ecosystem, and Android TV is another piece of that ecosystem, and Android Auto is another piece of that ecosystem. So the lessons that you're learning in one will be applicable broadly speaking. And I think that's really the future of Android is this multi-platform this multi-platform world where one size no longer fits all.
And the obvious question is it ecosystem or ecosystem? Which we will have to debate later. I'm sure Cy can weigh in if he ever gets to watch the show. Okay, so the UK spy agency has made an Android app, but it won't spy on you, the headline goes. And the goal is to teach students about cryptography. This is interesting, Alan. What's the deal here? Other than they've released an app to teach students about...
This is the dumbest headline I've ever seen. This is the dumbest headline I've ever seen. Basically, it's a cute app. I really need to... I kind of want to download it now and actually play with it. That helps people understand what cryptography is, why it's important to you in your daily life, what the history of cryptography is. The fact that it's coming from the British Security Agency, that's a little disconcerting, but that's life. I think this is a great tool. I have long been encouraging people to actually learn and understand what cryptography is, and this is one tool to help people understand it.
Bruce, I actually, I don't know if you're interested in cryptography at all, but I actually, when I was a programmer at Deltek Systems in McLean in 93, 94, I wrote the cryptography algorithm for what was then called ET, the electronic timesheet. Is this something that you find interesting at all?
Oh, I find it extremely interesting, especially in the line of work that I'm in. We're going through some major transitions and updates regarding HIPAA compliance. And encryption and cryptography is really huge when it comes. Right now we're using this Barracuda filter to try to catch emails that have information about health and stuff like that, because encryption would be too expensive for us right now to employ that across the whole company. But yeah, I'm very interested in encryption, and in fact, I've been doing a little more studying about Gmail and encryption and HIPAA compliance and signing a HIPAA agreement with Google and people who are doing that, and reading reviews about the whole arena of encryption as it relates to PCI, and which is mainly credit card transactions, and HIPAA, private healthcare information. So, really interests me a lot.
And it's something we all are concerned about as we see, Target and Home Depot and now Sony, all these things. So we're all wondering, are we next? Is your network going to be the next to be breached by hackers? Okay, so this is related to the previous topic, a couple of topics ago about Uber. Carriers can now install apps on Android handsets without customers' permission. I'm sure it's legal based on the terms of service, but it pisses me off. Go ahead, Alan.
Here's the deal on this one. This is incredibly unethical. Basically what it is that carriers are now installing an application which gets basically incredibly broad permissions from you. And since it's pre-installed, it's got the access already. And they're using this to install additional software, which again has incredibly broad permissions. This is bad. This is really, really bad, and carriers should be smacked across the face for it.
Bruce, any quick thoughts on the Cadeas?
I agree.
Yep. Effusive praise from the panel. Cadeas, any thoughts?
Well, that's a quick thought.
All right. Cadeas has a mouthful of fruit right now. Okay, so next up, Google's new troubleshooting app for Android will give you a call. Obviously inspired by Jeff Bezos, right?
Well, yes and no. Yes, it's obviously inspired by Jeff Bezos. Yes, it's about damn time that they did something like this. But honestly, this is based on technology that they've been fielding now for, 5 years? This is not really fundamentally anything new. They've had this concept of a callback system in place for a very, very long time. This is just extending it directly to your Android phone now. I think it's a fine move.
Any thoughts on this, Bruce?
No, I agree. Is this just for Android 5.0 that this works now?
I don't know. That wasn't clear if it was related to Lollipop or if this is a separate app. It certainly could be a separate app. I've used this for several Google services at this point.
Hmm.
All right, we're at about 13 minutes left. We got to hang it up. My reference to Bezos was that Amazon's Kindle Fire HD and probably some of their other models now have this sort of like, I need a help. I'm trying to purchase something, or any kind of tech support. You can go and it immediately connects you to somebody, and then you can grant them permission. I think take over your device if necessary to show you how to do something. So it's innovative, and so there you go. Google actually has phones now. That's an unfair dig, but not really. Okay, so bandwidth challenge developer, Google to ship Android SDKs on DVD. This is for folks in, various countries who don't have access to mobile but want to develop. I think this is absolutely awesome.
It's
Talk
not
about
not
removing.
access. It's not lack of access to mobile. It's lack of access to high bandwidth delivery systems. So instead, what they can do is they can work with their local Google developer group. Here's a plug for everyone out there. If you're not affiliated with the local Google developer group, do so. It's a great program, great way to learn more about Google technology. I heartily endorse it. I'm currently affiliated with 2 or 3 local GDGs. Great thing. But you'll be able to work with your local GDG and be able to get copies of a bunch of DVDs that are available. These DVDs contain the developer kits, the developer environments, documentation, training videos, a lot of material to help you get started and get going with developing for Android. So previously, this is all stuff that you needed to download, but a lot of it is really high bandwidth. Now you're able to just install it on a DVD with the help of your local developer group.
And just for folks who may be watching for the first time, Alan knows what he's talking about. He is the first person to be certified as a developer for Google Glass. He may still be the only one. And he is the co-author, along with our friend Jason Salas, of designing and developing for Google Glass by O'Reilly Media, which is now in paperback or in print, right?
It went to print. It's at the printers.
Yeah, we don't say paperback, we say print, because paperback implies like a Pulp Fiction $3 thing, and it's not. But yeah, so you can get that just O'Reilly Media.
Go to prisoner.com/glass, and there's a link to the book from there.
Awesome.
But this DVD approach is great. I think we're going to see it in a lot of developing countries where they don't have a mature internet. This will help people get started developing for it. I think it's a great resource.
Just to put this in perspective, the United States has about 340 million people. China has 1.3 billion people. India has 1.1 billion people. So that's a big deal. Okay, making Android apps just got easier. Android Studio officially debuts. Google's new app development environment is now stable and available. Is this how big a deal is this, and who is this geared for? Is this geared for like the student who's starting out, or someone like Kadeas?
This is geared for everybody. Android Studio is Google's recommended platform for developing Android apps. So if you're developing Android apps and you're expecting help from Google, it's going to be with Android Studio. This is their official development platform at this point. The fact that it's gone into production release, that's something of a big deal, but honestly, people have been assuming, people have been using it for a while now. It was originally rolled out at last year's I.O. as yeah, we're going to switch to this someday. And at this year's I.O., they were saying, yeah, it's time to, if you're not already using it, it's time to switch. It's time to switch. This is them saying, okay, this is what you should be using from here out.
Any other thoughts on this?
No, but I really appreciate Alan talking about Google development groups. I did a little search while he was commenting on this last story and found in Central Virginia has a Google developer group. So, and there were quite a few in McLean, Virginia, outside of D.C., different places. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
The GDG groups are awesome groups. I'm involved in one that's local to me and one that's in Manhattan itself. Mm-hmm. I've worked with GDGs from Boston to DC and talked to other GDG coordinators from across the U.S. and across the world. It's a great resource. Take advantage of it because they're more than happy to let you learn.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce, you could perhaps bring your mixology skills and bartending abilities and talents in exchange for some tips on Android development. That could be a thing. You could blog about it. All right, so next up is Android antitrust investigators ask Yandex to detail Google woes. The EU's competition authorities have formally requested evidence from the Russian web giant Yandex regarding a potential new antitrust case against Google, this time over the bundling of Google services with Android. This sounds like Microsoft Internet Explorer redone, Redux, whatever, and Google's getting beat up all over the place. Spain is just, they've gone hysterical, having a complete meltdown because Google did the obvious and said, we'll just leave over this crazy story about their driving traffic to Spanish publishers who are apparently beside themselves at the notion of that.
Yeah, but Dan,
what's the deal here, Alan?
Dan, let's not sidetrack the issue because that's totally irrelevant to this argument here.
Google EU antitrust, it's irrelevant?
Well, Google search antitrust is irrelevant to Android antitrust, sure.
Okay.
Because what's being the argument in this case is that Google was using its dominant position to actually edge out the dominant player in a market.
Now this was Kayak's argument, right? That they were purposefully putting their results down because they had a competitive product?
No. In this case, what the argument is that Google was using its dominant position with Android and was saying that companies that wanted to put in an alternate search engine weren't allowed to do so, and in fact were forced to not include that alternate search engine on the mobile phone if they wanted any sort of Google support whatsoever. So if you wanted to use Google's Play services, you needed to support Google search. You couldn't support the dominant search in your local market. And that dominant search in this case was Yandex, which is a major Russian search engine.
Thoughts? I know you're a big Russian enthusiast, Bruce. Any thoughts on...
Yeah, was Yandex available on the... Well, that's German. On the browser? I mean, could they search that way using the browser without having a...
It's not that you couldn't get to Yandex. It's that the default search was pointed at Google search. The only search installed was Google's search application. You couldn't get Yandex's search application. It's not that you couldn't get to it. It's just that carriers that wanted to offer what they saw was a better solution were forbidden from doing so.
Or even an additional solution.
Right.
Right. What's wrong with that? They may have a case.
All right. So next up is our this article, and Alan will understand this better than I do, but I want to ask you about what this is about, and also if you agree with the premise. The first paragraph here is what Google has in store for the mobile web, playing catch up with Apple finally bringing its A game. And there's Sundar. It's about time Google remembered its roots. The opening paragraph begins, for years Google has largely ignored the mobile web, preferring to focus on native Android app experiences, even as Apple, yes Apple, has invested heavily in improving HTML5 performance on iOS. Is that a fair dig? And is what's the deal here?
I think this is kind of a bogus argument. I sort of get where they're going with it, but Google's always paid a lot of attention to the mobile web. The fact that we've had Chrome as the primary browser on Android now for a year and a half, 2 years? It's been over a year and a half at this point. Shows what their dedication is. I think the thing that we've not yet seen is exactly where that crossover from web app to mobile app is. And saying that Apple is in the lead there, okay, I guess you can make that argument. I think they're wrong, but I guess you can make that argument. I think clearly Google is very much out in front on this. If you look, for example, at what they're talking about with material design. They're not saying this is a set of libraries for mobile. What they're saying is this is a set of libraries to support a consistent user interface from mobile to web. And it doesn't matter how you are deploying this. Here are a set of tools to make it look essentially the same, no matter what technology you're using behind the scenes. So I think it's a bogus argument. What do you think, Cadeus? Yeah, that's exactly what I thought you'd think, Cadeus. I don't think there's much to it. You have any thoughts on this, Bruce, while we fill time for Dan to come back so we can wrap the show?
Well, I've not really seen a whole lot of difference. I mean, I can't take exception with the idea of who's invested heavily. I mean, do we really know? What does that mean? Is it talk about money? Is it talk about time? Is it talk about resources? How do we know that Apple has invested more than Google has invested? I'll tell you one thing I really like about HTML5 and Chrome is I use a website called appear.in, appear.in, and you can do one-on-one up to 8 people video conferencing using HTML5 on the Chrome browser. And I love it because when I'm working during the day, I keep a browser tab open to that. If somebody needs me on my team, they bookmark that, they go there. I've even got a little extension that gives me a door knock, let me know somebody's in my room in the event I don't have it open. But being able to do that on the Chrome app on my Android phone is really great. So from my experience, I've seen Google doing well in the whole HTML5 arena. As far as moving from mobile apps to web apps, I'm not as knowledgeable on that. But
final thoughts on this, Cadeus? Okay, Cadeus has a throat issue. All right, thank you all so much. Bruce, what's the best website for people to find you?
Probably the best website for people to find me is morningmanna.com. It's a podcast I've been doing for about 5 or 6 years. It's more of a devotional type thing, so people might find it interesting. Morningmanna.com.
I actually have a tech angle to ask you real quick. If I'm looking for I've seen Podomatic. I've seen you use, what's the service you use?
For what?
For hosting your audio podcast.
Actually, I'm a real cheapskate. I've been using TalkShoe. I don't use TalkShoe to do live, but I upload recorded episodes that I do here, high quality. I've got 2,492 episodes up there on TalkShoe. Of course, I've got them all saved as well. But it works really great. Doesn't cost me a dime, and it's been rock solid for 5 years for me.
Awesome. And also, key point, Bruce just said he's got them all saved because as we saw with Justin TV, sometimes a service will shut down and they delete everything. The earlier episodes of Google Plus Week are gone. So there we go. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it. I am Dan McDermott. Check out Alan's book at prisoner.com/glass if you're interested in designing or developing apps for glass. Check out Cadeus at Cadeus.com. Check out Bruce at whatever he just said. And check me out on Google Plus and YouTube Live, Dan McDermott. Anyway, thank you for watching. For the live viewers, I apologize. I thought it was streaming, but the numbers are way down, and I was getting complaints like, I guess they're not doing it. They're not, so I apologize, but it's YouTube maintenance starting in about 3 minutes. So I've got to close the show. We have 2 programs. Google Plus Week is every Friday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. That's Google Plus Week, where we talk about tech news with an emphasis on Google stories first. And this program is our Android Week, which shockingly started on time tonight after a 3-week hiatus. Thank you for watching. This program is every Monday at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. 9 p.m. Eastern, yes. 6 p.m. Pacific. The human calculator speaks. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, have an awesome Android Week. Bam.